Hello, everyone, and welcome to 30 Minutes to Peacock Pose. Now, Peacock Pose, or Mayurasana, is not to be confused with Feathered Peacock Pose, which is another term for forearm stand. But Peacock Pose is the very challenging arm balance where we are on our hands with our elbows in our middle. So there's a lot of things we need to find in our bodies in order to get to Peacock Pose. First off, the pose is an awful lot on our wrists. So we need both wrist strength and wrist flexibility. Also, we need a lot of core strength because there's so much pressure on our core. So I highly recommend to do this practice on an empty stomach. You should always do yoga on an empty stomach, but especially today, there's so much pressure on your belly, you want to make sure you haven't eaten in the past hour. Along with core strength to protect our core, we also need a whole lot of back strength, primarily in the legs, in order to be lifted off the ground in the way that we do in Peacock Pose. And finally, we need even a little bit of shoulder strength just to get our arms and elbows in position. So let's start with a few wrist warm-ups, since that's the most important component that we can explore in this pose. Start by taking your left hand out and turning your palm away from you and bending your hand in this way. And then do the opposite. And then do the same on the other hand. And then do the opposite. And let's explore those two basic stretches with a little bit more weight in the hands. So from this kneeling position, you can just take your palms to the ground with your fingers facing you and lean a little bit into one side and lean a little bit into the other side. And we'll do the same, but on the backs of the hands. So if you've never done this before, don't put too much weight into the backs of your hands. But if you're more experienced with being on the backs of your hands, you can bring a lot more weight into this pose. And then slowly come up and shake it out. And then one of my favorite wrist strengthening exercises comes from tabletop. So come onto all fours with your shoulders over your wrist and your hips over your knees. And then you're going to keep all 10 fingers on your mat. Just lift your wrist off of the ground. So now you have your knuckles and fingers on the mat, and then slowly, very, very, very slowly lower back down. And do that about 10 times. So we lift the wrist off the ground, and then rather than just drop our palms back down, we slowly lower down. And do that 10 times. All right, and then release those hands and shake it out once again. Now let's move a little bit onto the shoulders. Let's first just feel what position we need our hands in. So take your arms out wide with your palms facing up, and then bring your hands in so your pinkies touch. Then flex your hands so your fingers now face the ground, and then bring your elbows in. And this is the basic position that we are looking for. So extend the arms out in front and bring the elbows in, and do that 10 times with the breath. So inhale to extend, exhale, elbows in. Inhale to extend, exhale, elbows in. So if we want this to be a little bit easier, Then we can do a few shoulder stretches. Start by taking the arms out wide. Cross your left arm over your body. Hook your left forearm with your right elbow. And breathe into the juicy shoulder stretch. And do the other side. So all of these poses and exercises and stretches that we're doing, feel free to hold them for longer periods of time. Feel free to do them multiple times throughout your yoga practices. I'm only showing them once or twice because we only have 30 minutes to get to this peacock pose. A lot of things we need to cover. And our eagle arms will also help us find that shoulder position. So inhale your arms out and up. Exhale the arms out wide and take your left arm underneath your right. Eagle the arms and inhale, looking up, reach your fingertips up. And exhale, bring your elbows in. And 5 of those. Inhale up. Exhale, elbows in. Inhale up. Exhale, elbows in. Last inhale. Empty your exhale. And other side, inhale, arms out and up. Exhale, arms out wide, and right arm underneath your left arm this time. Eagle your arms. Inhale, looking up. Exhale, elbows in. And continue on your own breath and on your own timing. All right, and then inhale, arms out and up, and exhale, release the hands. And the next thing I want to explore is our core engagement. So start by coming onto your back, and bend your legs and plant your feet on the mat, and then take your right hand and slide it underneath your low back. And what you'll find is that there's like a small little gap, depending on how deep your lumbar curve is, but there should be a bit of space between your low back and the ground. And I want you to figure out what muscles you need to engage in order to reduce that space, in order to flatten your low back on the mat. So from here, quite literally, flatten your low back and squeeze your own hand with your low back. And then with your left hand, take it to your belly, and then just notice those core muscles engaging in order to flatten out the lumbar. And then take both hands to your belly and find that same engagement. So flatten out the lumbar all the way to the ground. Feel those core muscles working, and then release. So neutral, there's a little bit of space between the 5 lower vertebrae that we call the lumbar spine. And a little bit of space between the lumbar and the ground. And we want to focus on flattening that space by engaging the belly. And the next thing I want you to explore is keeping that space, or keeping that flat back on the ground. So flatten the low back on the ground, and then lift the knees up, extend the legs up. And then your next challenge is to keep your low back flat on the ground as you lower your legs away from you. And you might find your belly start to rise at about 30 degrees, maybe 45 degrees. But if you keep that core engagement and you cultivate enough core strength, eventually you can extend the legs all the way out without letting the lower lumbar come off the ground. All right, so let's find that core strength right now. Extend the legs up at 90. Engage the core so the low back stays on the mat. You can take your palms to the ground or arms overhead for even more of a challenge. And then start to lower the legs away from you. Keep low back on the mat. Keep low back on the mat. Keep low back on the mat. And then inhale up. And do 10 of those. Exhale down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Keep that low back. Flat, 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 flat. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And hug your knees into your chest. Well done. All right, next little exercise. You might have done this exercise before. Extend your legs up towards the sky. Take your hands behind your head and lift the head off of the ground. And then your next task is to lift your hips off of the ground. Okay, little hip lifts. Try to do 20 of those. So looking up, lift, 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 lift. All right, and hug knees into the chest. Grab behind your knees, rock forward and back, up to a seat, and cross your ankles. Come forward back to your tabletop. And let's return to our wrists. So from tabletop, turn your hands around so your fingers face you. And start to just feel how that feels in your body. And then try to come to a plank pose with your hands in this position. So if you've never done this before, you're like, what, is that even possible? And you might just stay in tabletop. But can you extend the legs out behind you with your shoulders over your wrists? This is a lovely prep pose for our peacock. And knees find the mat. Turn your hands to face forward and move your body through a few cat-cows, warming up the spine. All right, come back to your neutral spine. From here, come onto your fingertips and walk those fingertips out in front of you. And then lower the heart and head to the mat, coming into a melting heart pose. And from melting heart is where we're going to find our thread the needle. So from melting heart pose, take your left arm, thread it underneath of your right armpit. And then rather than draw the right shoulder up like we usually do in thread the needle, draw the right shoulder down, like flatten all the way down to the mat. See if you could find that same shoulder stretch that we explored before. And then switch sides, draw the right shoulder up, take the left arm out in front of you, and switch sides. Right arm threads underneath the left, and rather than draw the left shoulder up, draw the left shoulder down. And return the right hand back out to a melting heart pose. From melting heart pose, drop your elbows to the mat. Shift your shoulders over your elbows and step the feet out behind you for a forearm plank pose. And let's cultivate both back and front strength. So from forearm plank pose, take your right leg off of the ground. Hold that there for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and switch. Left leg off of the ground for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 2 knees find the mat, tailbone finds the mat, uncurl all 10 toes, and find yourself in a Sphinx pose. Okay, so from here, we're going to thread both needles. So we're going to cross our arms. So take your left arm, thread it underneath the right, and take your right arm across, and fold forward from there, And breathe into the shoulder stretch. And let's switch sides. So come back up and switch whatever arm was on top to the bottom. All right, so our next step will be to cultivate some back strength. So lift the heart up and take the arms out to your side. And then from here, let's do a locust pose with our both palms flat on the ground and looking down. Just continue to look down, keeping the nose just a few inches off the mat, but lift the legs up really as high as you can. And really feel those back muscles behind your legs engage with the glutes, the hamstrings, the calf muscles. This is this lifting motion that we really need to find and cultivate in our Peacock Pose. And then exhale, release. Do the same thing, but this time with your arms out in front of you. Extending your arms out in front. This time we'll have our forehead on the mat and lift the legs off the ground as much as you can. So bring the forehead to the mat and lift the legs off the ground. Holding this pose for 10 breaths. Nice job. And then relax, release. Let's just find a rest here. Take your hands to your sides and take one cheek to the ground. Find your breath. And let's do one more lift here. This time both arms and legs. So extend the arms out in front of you. And on your next inhale, lift the heart, lift the head off of the ground. Lift the legs, lift the arms. Reach the thumbs to the sky like you want the two to touch. Reach the legs back and up like you want your heels to touch the ceiling. Continue to look down to keep the neck nice and long. We don't need to unnecessarily crunch into the low neck. And feel those back muscles engaging. Let's take 5 deep breaths. You got this for 5. 4. 3. 2. 1. And release, relax. Take hands under your shoulders and sit back. Child's pose. Nice job. Find your breath. And come back to tabletop. The next thing I wanted to explore is what it feels like to lean forward past your hands. So from this tabletop, shift your shoulders past where your wrists are. So rather than have them stacked, lean a little bit forward. And if you've never done this before, you're going to start to feel that wrist stretch really soon. But if you have done it before, then you can lean forward even more. And then sink back. And do that a few times. If you notice that sensation of falling, be sure to keep your arms straight. And really, it's all mental. So you're not going to fall, but you're not used to shifting your weight in such a way. All right, and we'll explore that same leaning, but in a forward fold. So tuck your toes, take your hips high to the sky, forward fold, and walk your hands towards your feet, coming to the forward fold at the rear of your mat, and bring your hands to the ground. And like we just did in our table stop, practice leaning weight from your feet into your hands. And maybe right now the shoulders stay over the wrist, but maybe you lean them a little bit past. And then do that about 10 times, finding that, that little, whoa, this gets really hard, really soon kind of point. And really cultivate that pushing strength. So as you're finding your weight, come into your hands, really push the ground away from you. All right, and this time walk all the way to the top of your mat. From here, let's find another wrist stretch in the form of Gorilla Pose. So bend the knees enough that you could step onto your palms, toes all the way up to the wrists. And you can even give yourself a little wrist massage with your toes if you want. From here, release your hands, take a deep bend in your knees, tuck your tailbone, and roll up one vertebra at a time. So you might remember earlier when we were kneeling, we came into an eagle pose and lifted up and rounded down. Let's try that in full eagle pose. So if you need to use one foot as a kickstand, feel free to do that. Start by standing tall at the top of your mat. Take your arms up and bend your knees into chair pose. From here, cross your left leg over your right. Feel free to use those left toes for balance. And then cross the left arm underneath the right. So from here, see if we can lift our elbows up and look up. And then round the spine, bring your elbows all the way into your belly. And do that 5 times. Inhale up. Exhale round. Inhale up. Exhale round. You got this. 2 more. And inhale, arms up. Back to chair pose, and exhale, standing hands to heart. Find your breath. All right, same thing, other side. You got this. Bend the knees, arms up, chair pose. Right leg crosses over your left, and right arm underneath the left. See if you can combine your movement with your breath. So inhale, lift up. Exhale, round. 5 of these. You got this. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. And if you are new to this movement, don't worry. It takes a lot of skill. And maybe you only move like a few inches up and down. That's totally normal. All right, and inhale, arms up, unwrap the legs, chair pose, and exhale, standing hands to heart. Find your breath. Nice job. All right, just a few more movements here to continue to strengthen our back. From here, shift your weight to your left foot, take your right knee up. Take your hands to your sides, thumbs facing out, palms facing forward. From here, try to make a super smooth transition to Warrior 3 by tipping forward, and extending your right leg out behind you. From here, try to make a super smooth transition to a high lunge by bending your left leg, letting your right foot find the mat, and reaching the arms forward and up. From here, come to what I call a power lunge by folding forward halfway. Once again, really feeling your back strength. See if you could draw the shoulders down and back. And reverse. So back to warrior 3. Shift forward, launch your right leg off into the sky. And come back to our standing balance, coming all the way up. Right knee comes up. 2 feet to the mat, hands to your heart. All right, let's try the other side. Left knee comes up, palms come to the side, thumbs facing out, palms facing forward. Slow, smooth transition to warrior 3. Tipping forward. Smooth transition to high lunge, left foot back of the mat, reaching the arms up. Smooth transition to power lunge. Smooth transition to warrior 3. And all the way back up to standing. And 2 feet to the mat, hands to your heart, find your breath. All right, we're going to try that little sequence, but with eagle arms and a chair pose. So if you want to do that one, feel free to continue doing that, but this is the next progression. From here, bend the knees, arms up, chair pose. Cross left leg over the right and eagle your arms. From here, fold forward with your torso. Unwrap the left leg. Warrior 3. From here, eagle arm into high lunge. From here, halfway fold, maintaining your eagle arms. Shifting forward to warrior 3. Back to eagle. So come all the way up. Left knee comes up. And left leg crosses over. And unwrap the arms, unwrap the legs. Come back to standing. Nice job. Other side. You got this. Bend the knees, arms up, chair pose. Shift the weight to the left foot. Right leg crosses over. Right arm underneath your left. Fold forward halfway, looking down. Unwrap the right leg, warrior 3. High lunge, maintaining your eagle arms. Halfway fold, maintaining eagle arms. Warrior 3, shifting forward. And then eagle pose. Come all the way up, right knee comes up. And cross leg once again. Nice job. Unwrap the arms, unwrap the legs. Hands to your heart, find your breath. Nice job. From here, so come on to your kneeling position. Come onto your shins. All right, well, we're ready to have a go at our Peacock Pose. And I'll show the first 2 progressions. We can do those together. And then I'll show the final movement in order to get there. So when you're just starting out in your Peacock Pose, you can use your head and your toes. Eventually, your head and your toes come off of the ground. So let me show you the first 2 steps. From our tabletop, we turn our hands back and in, but this time we bring them so our pinkies touch in our center line. And then I bring my top of the head to the mat with my elbows into my belly. So this is a really wonderful place to stop if you're new to this pose. If you want to continue, extend the legs back. And this is also a wonderful place to stop. And if you want to continue, you can lift your head off of the ground. All right, I'll show the next progression, but let's try this one together. From tabletop, turn your hands to face you. And maybe this is where your body is at today. Maybe we still need to work on the wrist stretch. That's normal. Bring your hands in so now the pinkies touch. And this might be a good place to stop too. The next challenge is bend your elbows in and bring your top of the head to the mat, kind of like a rabbit pose. Option to stop here, or option 2, extend the legs out in front of you and lift your head off of the ground. All right, and meeting in a kneeling position. All right, if you're ready for the final progression, the one thing you have to know is that in order to balance your weight over your hands, you do have to shift forward. So your elbows don't end up being directly over your wrists. Just the way your center of gravity works, you end up having to, or most people end up having to, shift forward. So I'll walk us through it together, and feel free to just watch if this is your first time doing this. Meeting in tabletop. Turning the hands around, pinkies touch, dropping onto your elbows. Top of the head finds the mat. I extend my legs out. I lift my head up. Now for me to balance, I need to shift forward. Okay. So it's that shifting forward that will give you the final pose. So it's a lot on the wrists. You might feel like your head is going to explode with all that intra-abdominal pressure. Maybe the legs are a little bit weak. We need to strengthen those to get them off of the ground. Kind of play with the pose, see what you need. I'll show it one more time. My elbows come in. My legs go straight. And I shift forward. All right, so that's it for this video. If you did need a little bit more help with the Warrior 3 or the Eagle Pose, definitely check out my other videos. I take a 30-minute sequence to go through just to get to those poses. And if there's other poses you want to see in this 30-minute video series, be sure to let me know in the comments below. My name is Zach Beach. You can learn more about me at zachbeach.com. Thank you again for joining me in this practice. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being you. Namaste.